everybody doing today? Thank you guys so much for hopping on and attending this. We are going to be talking about VA loans. My name is Erica Steeton-Roth, and I am one of the LCA moderators and real estate agents. And today I'm going to be discussing the VA loan with David Smith. He is the Vice President of Business Development with Omaha Mutual of Omaha. I did that last time to you. So I'm going to shut up now for a second. And David, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Erica. It's okay. Yeah. So my name is I'm David Smith. She mentioned I'm the Vice President of Business Development and Military Affairs for Mutual of Omaha Mortgage. I get to focus on two different things. Number one, I travel all over the country and I train real estate professionals on how to work with the VA loan, how some of the different myths that are associated with the VA loan. It's a course that I take a lot of pride in. And over, I guess I'd say the last 14 months, we've now officially trained just over 12,000 realtors across the country. So it's something it's a tremendous amount of fun. It's a growing, it's a growing program out there that people really want to get a better understanding of. And the second thing that I get to do is even more humbling. I run a small group of, there's only about 4 of us that we're authorized to go on to military bases, and we get a chance to talk to our active duty troops and share exactly what's happening with the VA loan with them. And it's somewhat sad sometimes because some of the stories that we hear and with people who have attempted to use their VA mortgage in the past, or they didn't understand it, they were guided or directed to go somewhere else. And really what we like to do is we lead through education, and we really want people to understand that this is an amazing program and that things have changed dramatically over the years. And we really do want our military population to take advantage of it. So, but Erica?
Yeah, and I'm going to throw this in here real quick. Speaking of traveling, you travel all over the place. I have been traveling. Why I am a mess and late getting on this. So I apologize to those of you, but wanted to make sure that we're still doing this awesome session with you, because I had the pleasure of meeting you. Gosh, was it about a month ago now when you came to our office, our Keller Williams office in Katy, Texas?
Yeah, just over a month. Yep.
Yeah, and you did a fantastic certification course, and I really just felt it would be great for you to be able to share your expertise. And recently we did a Facebook Live on my personal business page where we geared it more towards the consumer, right? And because even the consumers don't even really understand, the veterans may not really understand what their benefits are and what updates have been to the VA loan program and things like that over the years. And so one of the things that drives me crazy, and I see this in Lab Coat Agents, I see this in other groups that I'm part of, but there will be posts and there will be comments regarding VA loans, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. And then there's agents who will say things that they don't like working with VA buyers, or there's some I think again, misconceptions and myths around it, just like you were saying. And it's the most frustrating thing to me. I come from a military family. My father served, my grandfather served, my uncles served, my husband served, my father-in-law served, friends have served. And so for people to have negative, connotations and stuff to the VA loan is just extremely frustrating. And I apologize if you guys hear things in the background. I did travel today, and I'm at my brother's house, and the kids and dogs and whatever else decides to pop up in the background noise. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your military history and stuff as well?
Yeah, so I guess we'll start there. That's one of the reasons why this is such a huge passion for me. I served 8 total years. I'm an Army guy, so I was 11 Charlie, which is an infantry mortarman. Went all around the world, met all kinds of incredible people, did all kinds of incredible things. Unfortunately, ultimately, I got injured and I had to get out. So upon exiting from the military, I got into real estate. And so I've been a licensed real estate agent for about 18 years. But for the last 8 years, I've been more on the mortgage side of the house, and really have spent a good solid 7 to 8 years focusing on the veteran mission and making sure that our heroes are taken care of. And some of the stats that you hear out there are just they're mind blowing, right? So one of the biggest ones that I hear is there's about 26 million veterans in this country who have authorization rights to get a VA loan, but somehow only 10% actually have one. And so when we sit down and we look at the numbers and you say, well, what happened to the other 90% of the veterans that are out there? And you just alluded to it. It's back to, we're not educated. It's not that the VA doesn't educate us. It's not that the military doesn't educate us. It's about us as consumers being in the right state of mind to accept that information and understand how to use it later. And the program changes all the time. Every single year, there's new updates, there's new things that go on. And so ultimately, what happens is somebody's not around it, so they never take advantage of it, or the people that we work with, so real estate agents, mortgage loan officers, whatever, our friends, everybody says the VA loan is complicated, the VA loan is expensive, the VA loan takes forever to close, and so we need to go do something else. And when you ask about my history and why this is something that's important to me, when I got out of the military and I bought my first house, I was directed to go with an FHA loan. And I didn't know any better. I qualified for a VA loan, but really didn't understand it. And somebody really went out of their way to tell me that FHA was going to be better. Well, when I looked back at it, at the mortgage insurance that I paid, the upfront funding fee, or not funding fee, but mortgage insurance premium that I paid, my down payment responsibility, all of these things, over the course of that 7 years, I lost about $17,000 that I should have never had to pay. And that's where I sit there and I look at this program and say, it's imperative that we have to be educated and let our consumers make better decisions and better choices without our own personal judgment steering them one way or the other. And so that's why this matters to me.
Yeah, and I can tell you that even in the past, my husband and I have bought and sold 3 of our own homes.
Right.
And never once actually have we used the VA loan. And I can tell you that the last 2 times, it was because our real estate agent steered us away from doing it. I am not kidding you. It was before I got into real estate, and our real estate agent shied us away. And I think that is such a disgrace. And I want to read you something. So one of the things that I did prior to coming on today is I went back through Lab Coat agents and I looked for past posts that people had made and some of the responses, some of the comments to the posts. And I want to read you here's one, and I'm not of course going to say any names or anything like that. Veterans get screwed constantly by the VA loan. Add funding fee and closing costs, you end up owning 6% more than you bought it for. Take away all selling costs and you have 16% more than your net value. They were talking about down payments. The down should not be the seller's issue. The VA loan, we should all watch.
Wow. It's interesting. So, I mean, it seems like that there's some research there. There's obviously something going on in this negotiation that led to this. One of the things that we always look at when you start talking about a VA loan are some of the myths that are associated with it, right? And the very first one you're talking about, the VA loan is expensive. We hear this all the time, and it's because of the VA funding fee. But most people don't realize that the VA funding fee, there's actually a lot of things that have changed on it. Kind of specifically, there's a lot of things that changed as of January 1st, 2020. There's an entirely new VA fee funding schedule that's out there. So in the past, if you were a reservist or a National Guard member, or you were active duty, or you were a veteran, everybody paid a different fee associated with where you were. Well, effective January 1st, 2020, now everybody, regardless of what branch, regardless if you're National Guard, reserves, your status, whatever, everybody has the same fee, right? So if you're a first-time home buyer, you're putting zero money down, you're using your VA loan for the first time, the funding fee is 2.3%, right? For every subsequent use, and this is usually where people say it's expensive. So for every other house you buy, so house number 2, house number 10, house number 20, whatever, the VA funding fee now is 3.6%. But what most people don't realize is that you can put money down on a VA loan. right? And as little as 5% down drastically reduces the VA funding fee, right? So 5% down on a VA funding fee will take that 3.6 and will actually drop it down to 1.65. This is a one-time fee, and there's actually 3 traditional ways to pay this fee. Number one, the buyer can pay it in cash, right? They have the ability to actually just pay it at closing as a closing cost, right? Number two, through seller's concessions, we can actually negotiate and see if the seller can help pay the VA funding fee. Or number three, most common, what happens 90% of the time is the VA funding fee can be rolled into the loan. It can be financed. And they mentioned that in the emails that you're financing, which creates negative equity. Well, if you don't have the cash available, this is one of the options that still makes getting the home obtainable, right? So if we take that VA funding fee out and you look at it and you say, here's the biggest change. Here's the one that I really want people to understand. This is the game changer. This is the reason why we teach this. If the veteran has any service-connected disability, what does that mean? Military-related disability, documented at the VA, then the VA funding fee is waived for life. They don't have to pay it, regardless of what house they're buying, regardless of if they're refinancing, whatever. If they have a service-connected disability and it's documented at the VA, the funding fee is now waived. At one point in time, you used to have a 60% disability rating, and then it dropped to, I think it was 40. And now they came out and they said, guess what? If you have a service-connected disability at all, you don't have to pay it. Right? And so I talk to real estate agents all the time, and I ask them, I tell them, you know, it's imperative that you're asking your clients this. And the reason why is because, you know, probably what, I don't know, 50% of all the veterans in this country have some sort of service-connected disability. It could be anything. It could be tinnitus. Well, tinnitus is a 10% disability rating. The VA funding fee's gone, right? It could be PTSD. It could be any injury that happened in the military. There's a tremendous amount of people out there who don't have to pay the funding fee. And so when you look at this and you say, if the funding fees doesn't have to be paid, or even if I do have to pay it, but a little money down will drastically reduce that, guys, this is money back in the veteran's pocket. These are the things that people don't understand. They look at it and say, everything's the seller's responsibility. No, it's not. It's always negotiable. But I would say, talk to the veteran, ask them if they have a service-connected disability. If they do say yes, you know, be polite about it. Don't probe. Don't ask additional questions. This really is about, you know, helping the veteran understand what their benefits are, because they might not know that that's even an option. Some people don't like to ask, and that's perfectly fine. So in that case, what I would say is lead through education. If you don't want to ask if somebody got hurt in the military, explain to them, did you know that, you know, if you have a service-connected disability or a military-related disability, there's a bunch of fees that go away on your mortgage, and it's imperative that your loan officer know that. Because if the real estate agent doesn't ask and the loan officer doesn't ask, unfortunately, our veterans are getting charged. And guys, this is happening a lot. It's happening a tremendous amount because people aren't asking. Sometimes people feel uncomfortable asking. But this is an area where you can actually help the veteran. And guess what? If they don't have to pay the funding fee, you don't have to negotiate with the seller for that money. So that's, you know, these are those areas where the more that we know, the better we can put these people in their situation. So there's a little about the VA funding fee.
So while we're talking about fees, let me ask you, here was another question that somebody posted. This may have been yesterday. It says, I'm wondering how many in the group are aware that veterans cannot be charged buyer commission fees on a VA loan. And you and I haven't even discussed this together. I hadn't asked that question before, but I think it's an important question to know the answer to as we're talking about fees, but also, you know, with recent changes nationally with over commissions, and how some MLSs are stating that, you know, it's now got to be shown, and that you know, that we've got these iBuyers coming in, and we're competitive, and sellers may not want to pay the buyer agent fee. What happens in that situation?
Yeah, so there are things known as non-allowable fees, and there's an entire list of allowable and non-allowable fees. And what's, you know, what's different is every single market that's out there is going to have a different set of negotiating standards. And, you know, as I travel across the country, we run into some of these areas. The real estate buyer's commission and brokerage fees and things like that, those are considered a non-allowable. So that's something that usually a seller is going to cover, which I will say in, you know, probably 95% of the country is pretty standard, you know, maybe 90%. But, you know, I think as the market changes, and this is the one thing that I always want to point out is the VA sees when things like these are happening. The VA tends to make changes and tends to, you know, continue to modify the program so that veterans can take advantage of it. So what I'm trying to say is if we're running into markets where all of a sudden that is becoming a hindrance to our veterans getting the benefit that they earned, the VA is going to continue to adjust and continue to modify so that some of these stringent rules tend to go away. And that's one of the biggest things that we have to get across today is just the fact that the VA has changed just a million different things. And so from a buyer's agent's commission, the non-allowable fees, the list of non-allowables has changed. The amount of different things that can be negotiated has changed. These things change all the time. And I'd be obviously more than welcome to send you that list, send you that information so that you can see specifically what the VA is saying right now is considered a non-allowable. For most markets, it's not necessarily an issue, but we understand that in certain markets it can be. So yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of those changes. And I'm looking to the side over here because I'm looking through my notes from when you had come to present to us. So if you wonder what I'm looking at over here,
I got you.
That's what I'm going through. And there has been some changes over time. So what are some of the most important ones that you think real estate agents need to be aware of so that they can best educate their clients when they're talking to them?
So I'm going to go with there's probably 3 or 4 that are significant changes. One was the funding fee. There's a change in how the funding fee is the payout on the funding fee. The fact that putting 5% down will drop it from 3.6 to 1.65. It's huge. And why is this huge? We had a client that called us about 3 weeks ago. The real estate agent sat through our CE certification course. The client was going with the in-house lender. They wanted to put 10% down. And the in-house lender told them, I'm sorry, the VA loan's only 100% loan. You can't put any money down. And I sit there and I laugh because that's just, you know, it's crazy. But then I had to think about it a different way. And, you know, some of these things come to mind when people are being taken advantage of is if somebody puts 10% down, how is a loan officer commissioned? It's based on the loan amount. And 10% down means you just reduced what someone's commission might be. Now, I hope that that's not the case in the direction that this particular person was going and that they really just didn't know that you couldn't put money down on a loan. But yes, you can put money down on a VA loan and there's a benefit for doing it. The second biggest change that's out there, and this is one that I'm sure a lot of people have heard about, and I want to explain it so that everybody understands. In certain circumstances, the county loan limits have gone away. So what does this mean? If you don't have an active VA loan, or you've never had a foreclosure or a default, a short sale foreclosure on a VA loan, then you can go out and you can buy at any price point that you can qualify for. So for example, right now we have somebody under contract for about 1.2 million. They're getting 100% financed. They're going to get a pretty good interest rate, a pretty great interest rate, and it doesn't have any mortgage insurance. There is no PMI. The VA has waived the county loan limits because across the country, we start seeing areas where home prices are well more than the 484, 350 that it was, or even the 610. And so the VA waived the county loan limits. But if you own multiple houses with a VA loan, so you had a VA loan, you converted it to a rental, you bought your next house with a VA loan, at that point, county loan limits will come back into effect. What that means is the VA will only guarantee a certain amount of that home. So for 2020, county loan limit for most areas, not all areas, but the predominant majority of the country is 510, 400. So $510,400 is the most the VA will guarantee if you own multiple VA properties. Secondly, if you ever had a foreclosure or a short sale on a VA loan, county loan limits will be in effect for you as well. So I think it's amazing because let's say I buy a house with a VA loan, I sell it. It's just a normal transaction. I sell it, it's done. The next house I buy, I can buy at any price point I want as long as I can qualify for it, right? You can't put me in something I can't pay for. But this is pretty revolutionary. This is probably one of the biggest changes we've seen from the VA in 20 years. I mean, this is significant. And the reality is it's giving the veteran the choice to use their benefit regardless of where they're at in the country. This is huge. Another giant change that just came out this year, 8 weeks ago, I guess. If somebody is active duty, so they're still actively in the military and they have a Purple Heart, they've been awarded a Purple Heart and they're active duty, the VA funding fee is waived for them as well. They don't have to pay the VA funding fee. And so those are just three right off the top that I can think of, but these are the things I tell you when I tell you that the VA is getting a lot easier to work with. They're changing some of their property requirements. They're changing some of the program requirements. It's unbelievable how much easier it is to do a VA loan now than it was even when I started 18 years ago. So those are the big ones. The change to the county loan limit or no county loan limit, the change to the VA funding fee, the service-connected disabled veteran not having to pay the VA funding fee, and an active duty person with a Purple Heart. So out of curiosity, because my father's a Purple Heart recipient, but he's not active duty right now. Is there anything for honorably discharged Purple Heart recipients? Yeah, so it doesn't clearly define that right now, but I will say that most, maybe not most, but a good majority of folks who have a Purple Heart might also have a service-connected disability. And so that's something that you would want to ask. So my father-in-law, my father both have a Purple Heart. Both of them also have a service-connected disability. So it just depends. But in certain circumstances, people will be awarded. They won't have a service-connected disability. At that point, it's a standard VA transaction. So they do have to be active duty. Okay, so let's talk about appraisals. Yay. Let me read you a couple comments from our group. I know where it's going. You know where it's going. So I've got a few here I'll read. Let's see. VA loans are usually a lot tougher on the appraisal, where conventional loans can be somewhat loose. And it was followed, let me see, I would rather say conventional loans are more reasonable. Let me see. Okay, then we got, typically this happens when the seller knows it will need a lot of repairs to appraise and they do not have the funding to make said repairs. So when we're talking about VA loans and appraisals and property condition, what do you have to say about all this? Okay, so, again, this is another area where tremendous amounts of change, right? So over the course of time, and I think unfortunately what happens is, somebody did a VA loan 15 years ago when they were, that was one of their first transactions, and it was, really restrictive, and they've remembered that forever. Well, things change over time. The VA starts to get a lot easier to work with. So we have the regional loan center that we talk to, and what they've really done and what they've given us that I find just incredibly beneficial is they've given us the basic minimum property requirements. And it's a document, again, I'd love to share it with you. It breaks down almost every single scenario that you can come up with. If the house has a window that has a crack in it, does it approve? But they have a window that's broken. What's the difference in the two? Well, broken window will not pass a VA inspection, where a cracked window might. Does it have a pool? Does it have, walking up to the house, does it have 3 steps or does it have 4 steps that lead up to the door? Well, what happens if it has that 4th step? It mandatorily has to have a handrail. So what the VA has done is they put it out as clearly as possible to say, here are the different things that you need to pay attention to on a house. Here are the things that you should be aware of, so that not every house is a perfect VA house. There might be situations where it doesn't make sense because the seller, like you said, doesn't have the funds or something like that it doesn't make sense. But I'm going to tell you, there's a tremendous amount of property out there that passes with flying colors through a VA loan, and it's not an issue at all. The second thing that I always like to bring up, because we hear this all the time, the VA appraisers. Well, they're not actually VA W-2'd appraisers. They're contractors who are authorized and licensed to do VA appraisals. Well, usually these people are the exact same people who do conventional loans, who do FHA loans, who do, kind of whatever. It's not just I've heard it countless times, and I hope that, I know there's some people on here who already know this, but I've heard it countless times where they say, well, yeah, the VA is about to send out their W-2 person and they're just going to tear the house apart. It's not. These appraisers are usually, they've usually been in the business for a little while. They have to pass certain tests. They have to go through, a lot of the different VA training. I mean, they really do understand what they're doing. And so what most people want to know, and what most people, I want you guys to understand, what is the VA really concerned about? It boils down to safety, sanitary, and sound, right? So when I talk about soundness of the house, they're really looking to make sure that the house isn't going to fall down when the wind blows. They want to make sure that the house is built, to code or to quality, that the roof isn't going to cave in or something like that. That sound is sanitary. The biggest thing that they're looking for on sanitary is going to fall into that water well and septic, if septic's there. Clean drinking water is a primary concern, right? So if the house has a water well on it, they're going to require that inspection be done. The inspection has to be done by a water well, company. And what they're really checking for is that if the veteran and their family moves into this house, they should be able to drink clean drinking water. And I think that that's completely fair. Septic, same thing. They want to know that the septic system is operating as intended. We don't want to put, and it's not, take the word veteran out of it. We don't want to put a family into a situation where they can no longer use the restroom. I mean, it's just, sometimes we look at it and it's just because it's a veteran. No, it's in general, we really want to provide a house that's operating as intended. Safety, that's the big one, right? So safety, certain handrails, broken windows, things that could be hazardous to anybody. That's really what they're looking for. And so I think as you go through and you do more and more VA transactions, or you see more and more VA appraisals, it was actually kind of shocking to me. We did an interview. We did a couple different interviews with different VA appraisers around the country. And what we found was it was like less than 10% of the properties that they had done over the last 4 years failed appraisal due to property conditions. And so, I don't know if that's the same in every area, but these were the two gentlemen that we spoke to. That was the number. It really was, in 90% of the time or better, the house was fine. It passed with flying colors. So,
here's the thing though. I mean, if it doesn't matter what kind of a buyer you have, if you're going into a house and it has broken windows, I can't think of many buyers that wouldn't be negotiating that a window be replaced for $250 to $350 where I am. I mean, come on.
That's just it, right? If we take the word veteran out of it and we say human being, most people are going to have a problem if the front door is missing. I mean, it is what it is.
Well, here's the thing. I think as real estate agents, we have a responsibility to understand what these requirements are. We really do, or we're not doing our own due diligence. We're not doing enough justice for our clients, whether we're representing a VA buyer or whether we're representing any kind of, selling client or anything out there. I know in Texas, when we have the financing options in our listing agreement, it says, what kind of loans do you want to accept on this property? We check the boxes for FHA, conventional, VA, whatever it happens to be. And, if we can't sit there and explain to a seller what exactly it could mean, then we're not doing our job.
I'll tell you a horror story on that one real quick. We were working with a gentleman and he fired his real estate agent. No, and I'm not kidding. And I asked him why. He said when they went through the finance addendum, the real estate agent said, hey, we can accept conventional, we can accept FHA, we can accept cash. and he asked about VA, and he said, and the real estate agent told him, we don't want to accept VA. That just turns into a nightmare. It's going to cost you a fortune. It's going to be, blah, 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 right? The guy was retired command sergeant major.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm glad he got fired.
I appreciate your time, but I need a new realtor.
Yeah.
He was, and he just told me, he said, that he had served, I think it was 25 years, something like that. And he was pretty hot about it. So as he should be.
Well, the other thing is if you're so concerned going into appraisals, whether or not the property's going to appraise, then either you let the seller overprice in, I would say, a vast percentage of situations, or, you've done something wrong. And here's the other thing. I mean, I've recently sold a couple VA homes to VA buyers and didn't have any appraisal issues. But, the real estate agent, as a listing agent, one of our other responsibilities, even going into appraisals, if you think there's going to be any kind of question, I ask that when the appraiser calls me for the inspection or for the appraisal, I ask them for their email address. I get their email address. I send them an email with a list of updates and features to the home. I want to let them know if there's a new roof. I want to let them know if they just put in travertine and, in quartz countertops and, whatever else. And I also send them a list of the comps that stand out that I want them to focus on. If they're going out and there's 20 different homes for them to evaluate, I'm going to choose 3 to 6 that best help support my value, in hopes that they might use those, Right. And I always tell my sellers, I can't guarantee that what I send them is going to be utilized, but at least I am doing my job, because it can be difficult to fight on the back end. So why not put your best foot forward? And I think a lot of agents are lazy and they don't do things like that. Quite frankly, I mean, I hate to say it, guys, but come on. I mean, I think there's a lot of lazy agents out there.
Well, and they told us that exactly too. The couple of VA appraisers that we did, they were cool. They did an interview with us because they want people to understand what's going on too, and they're humans. And he had mentioned the same thing to us. He said, we spend a certain amount of time at the house, but we don't live there. We don't know every single thing that's been changed, updated, or done. And he goes, when we start to, when we get that list, or when we have an idea of how you evaluated, the pricing of this house, he goes, it helps us. I mean, they're human, instead of letting them guess, let's give them the actual facts and then let them make their determination from that point. The other thing that I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, never once have.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
no, it's okay. Go ahead.
I think it's pretty cool with the VA is, technically the VA appraiser has to get back a VA appraisal to you by whatever standard for the market. And most markets that we're in, that's 10 days or less. Some of the more rural areas where there's not a lot of appraisers, that could be different. But for most major markets, it's about 10 days. And that's pretty cool. So we get VA appraisals back a lot faster than we used to. And then secondly, if there is what they call a tidewater situation where the house is going to come in under value, the real estate agent and the mortgage company are afforded 48 hours to provide comps and provide some of that information to try and justify that cost, that price point. So not every situation works like that. That's what's somewhat unique to the VA. And these are some of those changes where you look at it and say, okay, things are faster. I mean, there was a point in time not that long ago where they used to send the certificate of eligibility in the mail, where you had to go to the VA to go get this thing. And it would, it took forever. And now all of a sudden this stuff's automated. We can get a certificate of eligibility in less than a minute. I mean, it's just not that complicated. And so,
well, and let's talk about that too, because this isn't the certificate of eligibility. And here I am trying to thumb through my notes that I've got from you real quick, but isn't it the certificate of eligibility that can hold that up if it's not gotten at first? Is it that one? Yes. Okay.
COE. The COE is the most important piece of paper you absolutely have to have. And on that COE, it's imperative that you get it day one. And there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, we want to make sure that somebody's qualified for a VA loan, first and foremost, right? The COE, the certificate of eligibility, says, yes, you have the authorization rights to get a VA loan, or no, you do not. But the other reason why you really want to understand, or why you really want to get this day one, is if there's a mistake, if there's something wrong with the certificate of eligibility, it can take up to 3 weeks to get it fixed. Some mistakes might be a misspelled name. Some mistakes might be a foreclosure or short sale on somebody who's never purchased a home before, right? Every now and then you run into some different kind of mistake and you really have to get it fixed. And I'll tell you one, it's not a mistake, but here's the reality. 1.9 million females have served our country. Well, I guarantee you that some of them may have a different last name when they served in the military and what they have now. Well, the COE is going to say what, obviously what their name was while they were serving in the military. So it's not a mistake, but we do have to get that updated. The reason why, as a mortgage loan officer, we have to write all of your mortgage docs with what the COE specifically says. And so if you have a wrong name or you have a problem on that, we got to get that solved immediately. And so what we've seen in this industry is people don't order the COE. They just take, their word for it that they're eligible. And then we're 4 or 5 days from closing, someone goes and gets the COE and now there's a problem. Well, it's already been 30 days. Now you've got to go to the seller and ask for an extension. And now it's the VA's fault that this took 60 days to close.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about some of the bad competition that is out there as far as lending is concerned. And we won't go into specifics to trash talk, but I do want to bring that up. But before I do, the certificate of eligibility along with the DD-214 is what they're going to need. Where can they go? Like if I have a VA buyer come to me and I sit down with them for a buyer consult, I should be telling them, make sure you have your DD-214 and your certificate of eligibility, and you go to which website to get that?
That is known as like electronic, ebenefits.va.gov. ebenefits.va.gov. This is an awesome website. This is a website created for the veterans to go do some self-service. So as a veteran, I can log on to eBenefits or register for it. When I get in there, I can get all kinds of information. I can get my DD-214 instantly. I can get my certificate of eligibility instantly. I can get my proof of a service-connected disability, which again, now that waives our VA funding fee, right? I can get medical prescriptions. I can set up VA appointments. They have a job board where I can go because companies like to hire veterans. I can go, there's all kinds of things to do there. But unfortunately, it's a website that hasn't been used by most veterans. So this is something that we have to share with the public. We have to let people know. The VA is trying to get the word out there because if I don't go to that website, there's only a couple ways I can get it. I can physically go to the VA, or I can call the VA and have them mail it to me. So from a certificate of eligibility standpoint, though, one of the other things that we want all of our real estate agents to know is as loan officers, we have a portal. We can get their information now instantly. I can do it in less than a minute. And it's not necessarily new, but it's not really that old either. And so what it's done is it's drastically reduced how long it takes to close a VA loan. It's just not complicated. So
well, I think
va.gov.
So there's a couple things here. Making sure that the real estate agents are well educated on VAs and are doing their duty in educating their clients, but also with them partnering with strong lenders who are able to successfully execute and in a timely manner the entire VA funding process. So why don't you talk a little bit about Mutual of Omaha? For your VA loans, roughly how long is it taking for you to close them, and what is your process? What are you guys seeing on your end?
Yeah, so Mutual of Omaha Mortgage is a great organization they take a ton of focus on VA. We're very, very friendly to our veterans out there. So one of the things that we don't do, we don't charge a loan origination fee to our veterans. We also don't charge mortgage processing fees and things like that. I run a pretty cool team. I've got a VA specific team with about 12 people spread out across the country. And what we do is we help service our veterans everywhere. So I'm a national trainer on VA. And so our goal is to make sure that, when we talk to our veterans and when we talk to our real estate partners, we want to be somebody who's an advocate for them, who's going to take that extra time to help our real estate agents know how to put that contract together, things that they might need, things that they don't need to negotiate for. We really want people to think VA is doesn't have that same image that it used to have, this is a very incredible mortgage program. And right now on my team, I'm averaging right around 22 to 23 days to close a purchase transaction.
Wow.
To finish. So when you do it all the time, it's just not that hard. And so I got a lot of great people on my team. A lot of people on my team actually served. Some are spouses of those who served. So it's a mission for them. And there are other great companies out there who are really, really good at VA. And then there's some that just either they don't like to do it, they don't know enough about it. And so, you alluded to it just a minute ago. I would love for you to use us. I would love for you to call me. We're a huge organization. I would welcome the opportunity to work with anybody on this call. But ultimately, align yourself. Think of VA as somewhat of a specialty product, because there are a few additional steps. There are some additional things you have to know or do with VA. If you think of it as a specialty product and you have somebody who can help service that program, all of a sudden it's not as complicated as you think. So again, my background, I'm David Smith. I'm vice president at Mutual of Omaha, and this is all I do is focus on VA. So
you've got a great website too, thevaloan.org.
thevaloan.org. Yes, that's our website, and that's
what can we do there, David?
So there's a lot of information there. We've got some different resources available. We have that minimum property requirements. We have some notes. We have the updates. One of the cool things that they've done is they've been recording me as I've gone around the country doing these presentations. And they're taking my class and they're breaking into like 3 and 5 minute segments. And we're going to house that there so that people can see, hey, maybe I have a question about, I've got a situation where I have 2 veterans who both served in the military. They're not married. They want to buy a house together. What are the rules that apply with that? Certain circumstances where, you don't run into it every day, but when you do run into it as a real estate agent, you want to know how to help it, right?
And actually, that's so funny. You and I play well off of each other with these interviews.
You're good at it?
Because we're getting good at it, aren't we? So I wanted to also bring that up because I didn't even think about it until I had never been in this situation until I was in your class, and I was like, well, that's awesome that this is the case. But whether it's 2 non-married veterans, a non-married co-borrower, or even same-sex marriages, right? Tell a little bit, it all goes, right?
Everything has changed. Yeah. So the VA now, same-sex marriages, that's not a big deal anymore. That's fine. That's acceptable. Of one person's a veteran, one person's not, they're not married. Yes, they can buy a house together. There are certain rules that apply. There may be a down payment responsibility. There may be some things that you need to know about that, but that's, that's what we're saying is, when you do VA every day and you know what these different rules are, and and it's not just me and my team. I mean, the people behind us, all of our processors, our underwriters. I mean, we live and breathe this VA stuff, and we understand all the different rules. All of a sudden, it's not complicated, and we can share with our real estate partners and say, hey, this is in this situation. Be aware of this. This is what happens. And then all we have to do is educate the borrowers, right? If we educate the borrowers, then we let them make their own decision, but they're making their decision with accurate information. And that's the big difference. And so that's how we like to help.
All right. So thevaloan.org, they can get information about all of this stuff that we've, all of the stuff we've discussed today.
There's a lot of
information there.
And then ultimately, as people take my course, which we hope to start off.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so as people start taking my course, so I travel all over the country. I will do presentations for offices as a whole. I'll do presentations for, at this point, companies are bringing me in across the country. I presented at two national one last weekend and one tomorrow. I'm presenting at a national conference. So this is, for me, this is a mission. For me, I've got an entire group of individual, people out there, 26 million folks, who I want our real estate community to service the right way and lead through education. So what I get to do is I go out and I teach real estate agents exactly what's going on so that I can equip them with that knowledge to be somebody who can help, to be an advocate for these folks. And
you do a phenomenal job. I mean, if anyone is looking to bring someone in, and it's CE hours, at least in Texas, it's CE hours. What other states is it?
I'm CE in 6 states right now, with 5 more that should be approved like within the next couple of weeks. And then we have the next 10 states going in. So it's a lot of paperwork, but we're getting there. We are getting there, and it's funny because as I talk, so here's what's crazy when you think about this. Some of these states that I've talked to, they tell me right off the bat, because they always want to know, what's your class about? What are you talking about? I've had multiple states tell me, wow, we don't have anything really like that. We don't have, we have maybe a national program or something like that, but we don't have a state-specific course. And I have a 2-hour version and a 3-hour version, depending on what the state authorizes. But we go through a bunch of different scenarios. I tend to lead my teaching through comedy and storytelling, because I want people to leave with, if I run into this situation, I've heard this before, I know what the outcome is, right? And so from a class perspective, if anybody's sitting out there and they're thinking, wow, we'd like to have this for our office or something like that, it's as easy as just emailing me and saying, what's your schedule look like? So it's, we go everywhere. CE courses, several different states are CE. And then the reality is after that, we give away, kind of a lot of different resources, military challenge coins, a logo saying that you're a VA certified agent, kind of a lot of different things to help you identify in the marketplace as somebody who cares about our veterans and somebody who has taken time to learn how to better service them. So.
Yeah. Well, David, your course is fun. It's engaging. It's informational. This webinar today, I hope, has brought a lot of value to our lab coat agents community. I know that we not only appreciate your time, we appreciate your service. And man, just thanks for serving our country, and thanks for being so awesome, and thanks for helping our veterans.
I definitely appreciate it. It's humbling. It's not often in life that you get to really say that you love your job. I can say it from the bottom of my heart. I love my job. I love teaching. I love having, an incredible mission, and it's a ride. It's a great one. So I appreciate this opportunity to be here. If anybody,
if they want to contact you, how can they do that?
All right. So my email is as easy as it gets. David Smith at mutualmortgage.com. David Smith at mutualmortgage.com. My direct cell phone number, so don't blow it up, don't break it, but my direct cell phone number is 281-745-0147. So 281-745-0147. Sometimes it's best to text me because from that point, if I'm teaching, once I get out of the class, I usually return every call.
And that's a Houston number. You're in Houston, but you go all over the country.
Yeah, I'm in Houston, but I'm never ever I'm not here all the time, so I'm everywhere.
You're in Houston, but you're not.
Yeah, I've got a pretty incredible team, so we try to be real quick to respond. We take care of our people. It's a good spot. I love what I'm doing, and I love who I'm with. So this is a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, Dave, thank you so much for your time today. Lab coat agents, thank you guys for your time today. And thank you for dealing with my appearance and my tardiness.
I travel all the time. I know what it's like. I get it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
to all to all the lab coat agents out there, I really appreciate your time. I hope that you found something valuable. If I can be a resource, would love to help. And Erica, as always, it's awesome to spend some time with you. I thank all of you guys for this opportunity, and I hope you all have a great Friday.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. Bye.